Gratitude. It's my everyday attitude. Gratitude. With a heart full of gratitude and a mind full of peace. It's how you should live. It's how you should be. With a heart full of gratitude and a mind full of peace. That's how you should love. That's how you stay free. Yeah.
All right, welcome everybody to Women's Week. So glad to see you here on our last day. We have a very nice and relaxing time after a great week of learning a lot from everybody. And we're so grateful for our speakers here today to help us with that. So just to go over a quick agenda for today, we will have a few introductions to generally get you know about MOBS and the other organizations that were a part of Women's Week this time. We will let you know about our speakers. We will have a group photo and activity hosted by our very own VP of Operations, Isla. We will have a workshop hosted by Lara from Humanest. Then we will have a guided meditation by Dr. Jennifer. And we will end up and close the week with some reflections. So from your event directors, we just want to say thank you for this week and for everybody who came and participated in all our workshops and was a part of the week in any way possible. We're very grateful and thank you so much. It was an amazing week and we're so glad you could make it for any of the events that you did. And I want to say a big thank you to Nancy and Isla for putting together this amazing week. They've been in charge of most of the things. Everything you've seen has probably been done by them. So a big hand to them for an amazing week and amazing sessions. Each session was amazing. So thank you guys. To give you a general recap about why we did this, we've all had, I think all three of us have had like different ideas about why we wanted to do Women's Week. For me, it was about building and providing resources to people, especially in our school like SF State, where we generally aren't aware of, because we have to compete with other schools, big schools like Stanford and Berkeley and stuff like that. The idea is to provide a platform where you can get these resources, and Women's Week was to provide these resources to you. And I'm glad you guys could make it. I want to say a big thank you to our partners for this week for helping us set up the workshops or carrying out the workshops during it. So a big thank you to In Her Shoes Bay Area for hosting Monday's workshop, the networking event, which is amazing, a lot of fun. Thank you to POW for hosting Wednesday's workshop, which was on finding your passion. And thank you to Dream for supporting us for Tuesday's event, which is about diversity and inclusion. We're very grateful to all three of them. And if you would like to know more about these organizations, please look up any of them on the links below. We will also drop it in the chat later, hopefully. Some general tips that we had for attendees this week, and I think are applicable today as well, is learn as much as you can, be open-minded, network. We're all trying to build a nice network here of women who are like-minded, who want to grow and learn as many things as they can together. So connect with the other attendees today or the new connections that you made throughout the week, and have a chat with our speakers after the event. Reach out to them via LinkedIn if you want to know more. And if you want to build new relationships, please do drop your LinkedIn and your Gmail or whatever you prefer on the network connections spreadsheet that hopefully one of my colleagues is dropping into the chat right now. And you can always stay connected with us through our email list for videos, tips, and resources. And one common thought we've had throughout the week, and I will bring it up again, is own your strength and courage. Don't let anything stop you from gaining everything you can from this event. I want to say a big thanks to Big Health because they've provided all the attendees here today with free community access to Sleepio and daylight services for free. So if you would like to use these services, please use the links mentioned there. We will also be sending out an email to everybody who RSVP'd with the instructions on how to use these resources. So big thank you to them, and please do use it. They're all amazing resources again for your mental health. All right, we're gonna have a quick group photo. So I request everybody who is here today and would like to please turn on their video. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's completely okay. And Lara, Nancy, could one of you please take the group photo?
Yeah, I can do it. One moment. Cheese. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I have a doggy.
Yay! Oh.
Hi,
Hi, good to see you, Echo.
great to see you guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. So we're gonna do a quick, actually, yeah, let's do that. First, our VP of Operations, Ayla, is gonna do a quick exercise and reflection almost on how we're feeling today and a very special activity. So I'm gonna hand it off to her to carry it out.
Thank you, Aditi. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to be able to spend this Friday evening with you all. I'm dropping a link in the chat, and I request everyone to please go on that link so we can all express ourselves. And I just want to give a safe space to you all, no judgment, and we'll work through a series of questions. I'll also share my screen. But I'd prefer if you guys can also go on that link that I sent. I'll give you another second to hop on. Hopefully you are. So with these, oh, okay, someone's answering again already. So if you can all answer the first question, how are you feeling in this moment? Whether you've been building up some things for some years or this week, feel free to let it out in this first question. And I'll give you guys a moment to add. So I see some of us is feeling tired, anxious about this week ending, exhausted, relieved that it's Friday, anxious. So it seems like the many things that's going on in the world is hitting us, and that's okay because that is a part of our human experience. And I want to encourage you guys to hang in there. And it looks like we're not alone. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing how you're feeling. So what helps you when you are down? Or what advice would you give to someone who is going through a hard time? Or you can respond to what you would do if you're anxious, tired, and relieved that it's Friday. All right. Someone says taking deep breaths, self-check-in, and going for a walk, which is really great to just be still and ground yourself with those breaths. Oxygen is so important for our life to survive. And when there's not fires, we could really appreciate it even more because we can't really just take oxygen for granted. Self-check-ins are great to really think about, to look within and take a moment to ask yourself how you're feeling and what you could do about it, or keep doing it if you're feeling good. Going for a walk, movement is really good for our mental health. Sitting at home all day could be really draining if it's routine. So I'm glad that's there. Cooking and watching films, leaning into your comfort, what gives you comfort, exercise, clean the space around you. I relate to that a lot. When my space is not clean, I do not feel like I can focus. So that's a great tip. It often doesn't feel like it, but it will get better. That's a nice message. Journaling, letting things out like we are right now, which I appreciate all of you guys sharing. Listening to podcasts and binaural sounds and frequencies. If you are going through a hard time, please reach out to your loved ones. It's so easy to, in like a kind of individualistic society, to feel like you have to deal with everything on your own, but like people, you are loved, people are here for you. Don't be afraid to reach out when you need help. What makes you smile? This one is probably going to be my favorite question. Laughter with friends, sunlight on my face, yes. Thinking about being in love, that's so cute. My dog Finn and dear friends, we love community and best friends and being around friends and family, cheese bread. Yes, making new connections with amazing women power. We are finding our voices and taking our power back from not having as many rights in our past history. So that's amazing. Plants, yes, nature, thinking about the times my friends and family have shown up for me. That's so special when there are people there and you are supported. Sometimes you are supported and it's not as verbalized. So it's nice when cat videos, hearing Women's Day, dreams and joy. That's nice. All right, we're gonna go to our last question. What is one thing you are grateful for? Community, a warm and safe home. That's a blessing. Grateful for having a strong and supportive group of people in my life and hot baths, time, my bed, art, friends, and family. That was really nice. Thank you guys for sharing. I just wanted to get a sense of how we're feeling and share some positive things that we feel. Thank you guys for participating in this little questionnaire activity, and it was really great to hear all of these and hear from you. I'll give it back to you, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Ayla. I think that was amazing. I think all of us enjoyed that. And thank you so much for coming up with that idea. I think it was a great idea. All right, so I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. We have Lara Gregorio, who's the CEO and co-founder of Humanest, who will be giving us a workshop on some general mental health tips that we can incorporate into the workplace. And we have Dr. Jennifer Daubenmier, who is an SFSU professor in holistic health studies, and she will be giving us a short guided meditation after that. So I'm going to hand it over to Lara.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you on a Friday evening. So thanks so much for showing up and joining us. I am going to try to share my screen here. So just give me 1 second as I get this loaded up. All right. Can you all see that? Great. So I'm going to go through some kind of just ways that we can think about our thoughts and our feelings in a different way. Sometimes our thoughts get in our way. And I think we're all sort of susceptible to this idea that our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, they can actually become kind of harmful sometimes if we're not keeping them in check, or if we're not finding ways to balance them out with healthier redirection and re-engagement in healthy ways in our lives. So I'm going to go over some common issues that we think about when it comes to stress, anxiety, self-doubt, confidence. And I'm hopefully going to be giving you some sort of actionable tips and tools and strategies you can be putting into place today, and then continue to practice on a day-to-day basis, really kind of tangible tools. And when you think about it, we do this all the time when we go to the gym, right? We work on muscles that are a little bit weaker. We work on trying to build our stamina, our strength, but we don't usually think about that when it comes to mental health. So this is really an opportunity to get some of those basic techniques and tools that can help to strengthen those parts of your brain where you may be feeling a little bit weaker, or where you tend to fall back on some of the unhealthier patterns because they're the ones that are familiar and that are known. And learning the ways to step out of some of those typical sort of pathways you normally go down, even when they're not helpful for you. The more you practice other ways, the more you can begin to really cultivate healthier ways of having a relationship with yourself as well as with others. The first one we're going to think through is around anxiety. Now, if you think about anxiety, stress, worry, it's actually often a really good thing. It exists for a reason. Anxiety and worry and stress, it gives us a little bit of a guidance on what's really important to us. If something didn't worry you, it probably is not something that's important. And so it really sort of gives us a little flag of when there's a value. If you're worried about whether you're going to do well in a class, it probably means that you value achievement. If you didn't really worry about that test, or if you didn't really worry about a project you were working on or a group that you're a part of, then it probably means it's not that important to you. It's not a priority for you. So it kind of, anxiety to some extent and worry a little bit provides that goalpost for us. It redirects us into saying, this is something that's important to me. Same thing with relationships. If you're not really worried about a relationship, sometimes it's because you're secure in it. Sometimes it's because maybe it's not one that's that important to you. Anxiety prepares us. It gives us sort of the little bit of a push that forces us to do better, forces us to try our best, right? Because the worry or the anxiety kind of gives us that little coaching that we need to pay more attention from a sort of evolutionary perspective. It was the anxiety that sort of primed us that there's something to be concerned about, that we need to be heightened in our awareness. And so in that way, it sort of gives us that little sign that there's something that might be a threat. And so in some ways, it's really helpful in terms of preparing us, protecting us in those kinds of moments. But there are times when that kind of can kick into overdrive, where the anxiety in and of itself can become counterproductive, where it actually can cause more problems than it can help. And that sense of anxiety, of sitting in that, can feel really, really uncomfortable and sometimes even completely intolerable. One of the most important tools you can learn and you can begin to practice is recognizing, is this good anxiety or is this problematic anxiety? And where does it pass that threshold? At what point is it beginning to be counterproductive? And in those times, it's time to start thinking about ways that you can manage that. One way to know if it's becoming counterproductive is if it's getting in the way. There's times in which you might be a little bit worried about an upcoming exam. You might be a little bit worried about an upcoming interview, a job interview, or a project you have to do at work. Those are all kind of good bits of anxiety. But if you've done everything you can do and there's nothing left to do and you're still feeling really anxious about it, that might be where it's tipping into that place of being a little bit counterproductive. So there's a couple of things we can do in that moment where you're feeling like those wheels are turning a lot and you're sort of in that place of spinning. It's time for you to sort of take that power back, to be able to reclaim your own strength in that moment, and to remember that you've gotten through 100% of your hard times thus far. You can do things, you can do hard things. I don't know if any of you are Peloton people, but I'm on Peloton a lot. And so there's a Peloton instructor who always talks about, we can do hard things. We can do hard things. You can do hard things. The anxiety sometimes will begin to tell you you can't. And that's when it's important to remember that you can. And there's that moment in which you can feel those wheels turning, when you can observe it and you can say, oh, I know what this is. I see what this is. Naming the anxiety for what it is, naming the stress, rather than getting caught up in the cycle of it, but just being able to observe it and say, oh, there's that stress thing again. I know what this feels like. Being able to name it sometimes just in and of itself can be kind of a healing thing because it's separate from you. And I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking that's part of who we are, as opposed to a feeling that we're feeling. So being able to name it and observe it is a way to tame it. We can kind of say, okay, anxiety, I see you're here. I know what you're trying to do. I get it. You're trying to prepare me. And there's that moment where you can say, you know what? I've got this. I think I've got this. I don't need you to prepare me anymore. I've done everything I can. You can take a back seat now. I'm back in the driver's seat. I've got this. And then you got to let it go. You got to let it go, because holding on to that anxiety when you've tipped past the point is actually no longer helpful. It's helpful to get you to that point, but once you've passed that point, then it really can start to get in the way. There's a couple of other things you can do when you just can't turn it off. One is to contain it. So there's two ways to contain it. You can either say you're going to take a break from the anxiety. Maybe you set a timer for 30 minutes and you say, for this next 30 minutes, I'm going to table these concerns. I'm not going to think about them for 30 minutes. I can think about the ice cream that I'm eating. I can think about this TV show that I'm watching. Those things are still going to be there. Those concerns will still be there. Those things that need to get done, they're still going to be there, but you don't get these 30 minutes back. So this 30 minutes, you're just going to be here in this 30 minutes. Those things will wait. So that's one way to contain it. And my guess is usually what we see happen is when people come back after that 30 minutes, they come back recharged, they come back rebooted, they're ready. It's like when on your laptop or on your computer, if you've been working for a lot of hours on it, you hear when that fan kicks on, right? It starts to kind of go into overdrive and it starts to slow down. Your computer stops working so well when it's doing too much. And if you call any helpline for computers, what are they going to tell you? Any IT department, they're going to say, unplug it and plug it back in or restart it. Sometimes our brains need that little bit of restart. You got to reboot. And that's okay. This happens all the time. It happens to all of us. And again, it's going back to that idea of naming it and taming it. You see it, you observe it. You're like, oh, look at that. My fan is kicked on. My computer is.
Laura, I have a question.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, you mentioned that moment where you start to catch it and then you catch it and you switch it around. But what if you're like in it? Like it's been an hour and you're just like on the floor, just thinking like you made the wrong career choice. You're useless. Nothing will ever go well. What then?
Yeah. So taking a couple of these tips, right? And I'm going to talk to that one in just the next slide is talking about talking back to the thoughts. So can you hold that for just 1 second and we can come back?
Absolutely.
And if I don't get to it at the end, let's make sure we circle back around so we can get to it. Okay. Good question. The other part of this is containing, and this may also sort of address it. You can contain it by saying you're going to contain it by saying you're not going to think about it for a little bit of time. And then the flip side of that is containing it by saying, I'm going to think about it, but only for the next 30 minutes, right? Sometimes as opposed to like rebooting your computer, sometimes you actually just have to dive into it because it's not going anywhere. And you just have to feel it. Some feelings have to be felt. There's this really wise person who I've studied some like Buddhist meditation, and I'm sure maybe we'll get to this later too. But there was somebody who said, whatever you resist persists, right? So the more you resist it, sometimes it's going to persist. And that's where that power comes in, just observing it and saying, I see it. I know what this is. And there is some fear that happens sometimes where if you give into it, it will consume you. But the reality is feelings will not kill you. Feelings will not consume you. There is a point in which they will peak and then they will begin to go away and they will fade, but you have to ride that wave. Sometimes it's the resistance to them that's the most uncomfortable part. But again, containing it is important because otherwise it can kind of just continue. So allowing yourself to feel it in a container, in saying a 30-minute time frame where you say, I'm just going to feel this. I'm going to allow myself just to fully be there. And then I need to figure out what my actionable steps are next to move on. And this is kind of funny because back to your point, one of the really, and this is going to sound very bizarre, but one of the things I've heard and I've practiced myself that's very, very helpful sometimes, and this again sounds weird, is stopping, dropping, and rolling. And we hear about this for fire, right? But sometimes you need to have that neurochemical reboot and literally stopping what you're doing, laying down on the floor and rolling around gives your brain that little mental break, and it rolls out all those the tension in all of your muscles, and it allows you just to kind of like reboot. So if you're having trouble and you're stuck and you just really need a way to break out of that, sometimes rolling around and just feeling your body rolling around can get you to that place where you've rebooted. Other people I've talked to have said that they've done things like holding an ice cube, which also can help break you out of a cycle. It brings you into the present. So you hold it until the point where you're actually feeling that. So there's kinds of tangible things that you can do sometimes to break yourself out of that. I do want to talk about to your question is how do you deal with self-talk? How do you deal with those thoughts? Because sometimes it's the thoughts themselves, not the feeling, that are the problem. And if any of you have ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, this is the cycle that you get trained in or that you practice when you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, because the cognitions or the thoughts lead to feelings that lead to behaviors that then end up becoming sort of this vicious cycle. And so if you can reframe or change the thoughts, you can actually change the feelings, and then you change the behavior. And it's this kind of magical cycle, because the thoughts, while we can't always change what we feel, we can change our thoughts. And so beginning to question your own thoughts, especially when you're in one of these cycles where you're sort of beating yourself up, or you're questioning yourself, you're doubting yourself, you're anxious. These are all thoughts that are not always kind to yourself. And so beginning to become your own you have to be sort of skeptical of your own thoughts. Beginning to question, are these helpful to me? Are these thoughts getting me where I want to be? And then beginning to ask yourself some of these questions. Would you let somebody else talk to you the way you're talking to yourself right now? So that thought of, I'm not going to do well on this, or people won't like me. Would you let somebody else say that to you? And if not, why will you say it to yourself? Would you let a friend say that to themselves? And asking yourself that. What would you say to a friend if they came to you and they said the things that you were saying to yourself? How can you give yourself the same benefit? I think one of you at the beginning of at the beginning of the warm-up exercise talked about journaling. These are great prompts for journaling. So when you're stuck in that place where you're in this cycle of saying really kind of awful or self-defeating thoughts, if you can instead take yourself out of it and say, what would I say to my friend right now if they were saying this? That's an amazing journaling exercise, because sometimes you'll be amazed what will come out of your pen or what will come out of your fingers when you're typing. Because it's hard to do it for ourselves, but sometimes we can say things for somebody else or in writing that we can't necessarily say to ourselves in those moments. The second tip here is to ask yourself, is it true? And this is where I would ask yourself to play your own defense attorney. When you have a thought, maybe it's a thought like, I won't be liked, or nobody will like me. Is there evidence to suggest that that's true? And this is another great writing exercise, to get out a piece of paper and say, here's the thought I'm having. What's the evidence that this is true? And then on a second column, what's the evidence that it's not true? Are there instances in your life where you've proved that wrong? Are there people who do like you? Are there times where you have been successful? Are there times when you thought you couldn't, but you could and you did? These are amazing reminders to be able to write down and catalog. And one of the most powerful things is actually not to do it in one of the moments of weakness. Because the thing is, all of us are emotional roller coasters. Every one of us have our days when we feel stronger and our days when we feel weaker. If you can write down these thoughts, especially the ones that you know are recurrent, the ones you have really frequently, in a moment when you're not feeling that thought, write down the evidence to the contrary so that you have it handy in the moments when you're feeling weaker and you can't access that as well. And then it's important to ask yourself too, is it who you are or is it a feeling? Because I think culturally, societally, we often have this tendency to use the word am as opposed to saying feel. So I am lazy versus I feel lazy. And I would even take that further to say, I feel lazy right now, as opposed to I am lazy, which is a general statement about ourselves or our identity, as opposed to in this moment, I feel lazy. Or, you know, anytime you find yourself making a global statement about yourself, can you turn it around and turn it into a feeling? Because the feelings, as I said, pass. They come and they go. You can ride out that feeling and it will go away. I once heard somebody say, feelings, even the ones we don't want to have, are like guests. They come and they stay with us. Sometimes we don't want them there, but they come and they stay. We can welcome them. We embrace them. We can try to understand why they're there. And then they'll go. And then you'll have another feeling or another guest that will come. The problem becomes more problematic when we begin to see that as an identity or a generalization about ourselves, as opposed to just a feeling that's coming. And again, if you can come back to what are the thoughts underneath the feeling, call those into question, sometimes you can actually change the feeling. It's like a superpower, seriously. When you start practicing this and you start doing it, it gets easier and it is like a superpower. And it's always helpful to come back to, are these thoughts helpful? Are they helping me right now? Are they productive? Are they getting me where I want to be? There's this old famous person in the therapy world who always used to say, how's that working for you? You know, like you're having that thought, how's that working for you? Is that working well for you? If not, maybe it's time to challenge the thought. Maybe it's time to question it. Is there a reason that it's there? I say it's a secondary gain here, but sometimes we think about that loop, right? Is the thought there really because it's serving a purpose in some way, shape, or form? Is that thought of I won't be liked allowing me then to say, I'm going to avoid going to this party because I'm scared and I'm afraid of taking that risk? And it's safer. So by saying I won't be liked, am I actually staying in a safe place? And so it's serving a purpose for itself, but then it's also feeding itself back in. So then I can't prove the thought wrong, right? Sometimes you actually have to do the thing that's uncomfortable in order to prove it wrong. Another just important question to ask yourself sometimes is, do you ever say, I'll be happy when? I think we often have this process of always putting off happiness, of saying, I'll be happy when I finish this test. I'll be happy when I get that job. I'll be happy when my hair is long, whatever it might be. And if you find yourself in that pattern, it's an important one to question. Because my guess is everybody here can recognize a time when you said, I'll be happy when X happens, that happens. And then the goalpost moves. And then you're happy when the next thing happens. So it's important to call into question, what are you putting off happiness for? And is there a way to find it today, even if it's just for a few minutes? I want to talk just for a brief second, and then I'm going to wrap up here, but I want to talk about resilience because I think it's really important. These tools, these strategies, these techniques and skills are easier to do when basic needs are already met. I find this in myself, that the thoughts that I know that are counterproductive for me, even though I've worked on them for years and I've done a lot of work on this myself, I've been in therapy most of my life. I am a therapist. And yet I know those thoughts, those same ones that are my tricky, troublesome thoughts that bring me to those feelings that are really challenging for me, they pop right back up as soon as I'm tired or I'm hungry. Sometimes I avoid noticing very basic needs. Like I'll be cold and I won't even realize that I'm cold because I'm so focused on something else. But then that's counterproductive too, because it becomes a little bit of a vicious cycle. My body starts to go into a little bit of overdrive because I'm not getting my basic needs met, which then automatically make me less resilient to the skills that I've been practicing. So staying in tune with what you need and making sure you're getting your basic needs met are going to make each one of these things way more easy. Making sure you have supports available, social supports, emotional supports. Sometimes having a buddy system is really, really awesome for some of these tools. The kind of teaming up with somebody else who's also practicing some of these. Maybe you identify somebody who's here in this meeting tonight and you find a buddy that's like, hey, let's practice this together and let's check in. Because sometimes when we're not feeling resilient and we're feeling weaker, somebody else can see the things that we can't. And we're not all weak at the same time. That's the magic, right? And again, all of these things take practice. Like I said at the beginning, these are muscles that you're working. And if by default your reflex automatically goes back to the same patterns that keep you stuck, you will continue to go back to them because they're easier, they're known. There are neural pathways in your brain that have already been formed that go back to the default mechanism, that go back to those default ways that you think about things and that you feel about things. Those are the easier ones. But the more you practice these skills, the more you continue to start to call into question the thoughts that are not helpful for you, you begin to form neural pathways that are new. And those reflexes don't kick in quite as easily as they usually do. And you'll see that it gets easier and easier the more you practice them. And sometimes it's helpful to choose one thing, the one thought that is the one that is most harmful for you, the one that gets you to that anxious place, that place of self-doubt, that place of stress where you're not able to function. What's the underlying thought there? And how are you going to practice challenging it this week? What is going to be your strategy for that? Just choose one to start it off. And then I want to just say, reach out. If it feels like you can't do it on your own, most of us can't do this on your own. You either need a buddy or you need somebody else you can turn to for help. Sometimes it gets beyond the point where you can do it on your own or friends can help. And that's when it's important to seek additional support, whether that's a local therapist, whether that's mental health supports or community support in your local community. At Humanest, we have a community where we have peers that are helping each other practice these tools every day. And so we have online forums where people are helping each other. And we have groups like this that are led by counselors where people actually will take you through a guided exercise with a piece of paper and everything to help you practice some of these skills. And then you can connect with everybody afterwards to sort of continue to practice it. So if you want to come check us out, I actually have a coupon code that I made for everybody who's attending tonight. If you guys want to come check it out, you can put in the code SFSU and we'll give you a 10% off for your first month. So come check it out. But again, find a buddy on here too. Check it out, see if you can practice some of these tools. I'm happy, I know I'm over my time, but I'm happy to answer questions or if there's other thoughts that people have.
Thank you so much, Lara. I feel like that was amazing, very insightful, and I learned so much personally. So thank you so much for that. And your tips about like the self-talk, it kind of reminded me of Socratic questioning. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but yeah, it's like where you basically try to talk back to your anxious thoughts and like break it down essentially so that it doesn't bother you anymore. So thank you so much for everything. And I'll open up to everybody. I think Aiko had a question in the chat I saw before. So if you want to talk about it, Aiko, or I can read it out, either way.
Yes. I thank you so much, Aditi. Thank you, Lara. I'm actually walking right now, so sorry for the excuse me for the noise background. What if we have like people in our life that we really care about that that criticize us constantly and have like given has over the years just kind of formed these narratives about us that's not true, but it's actually kind of ingrained in us that we've kind of believed it along the way growing up, and that's been kind of like our I don't know, it's just like it feels like we know much more and we feel like it's like, oh, this is like a bullying behavior. And are we able, I mean, as far as framing it, would it be better to like frame it so that we say that that person is actually suffering and we want to give that person love instead of, feeling like, oh, this person is bullying me, therefore we're creating more division. Or if if we're not agreeing like politically and then end up getting attacked and because that's huge, that's my current experience right now with my family.
Yeah.
And
Pretty huge.
because of like political views are not in alignment with our parents, so it's like and it becomes kind of it gets pretty intense and you're doing your best to be loving and but at the same time I kind of take I have been internalizing a lot of criticism over the years, even but it's just like, and that plays into my thoughts as a person not as a woman, or as a professional, or just trying to be kind to myself.
And you're all human, so of course that start to seep in, right? And I think the most important thing you can do is to remember that you can't change other people's behavior. All you can do is work on how you are going to interpret that and what you're going to do to take care of yourself, to create boundaries that protect yourself and keep you in a place where you can separate their beliefs from who you are and who you want to be. Right? And then let it go, because you can't change who they are and you can't change the way that they're going to act or the way that they're going to treat you. But you can develop a new internal dialogue for yourself. And that is something you can work on, and that is something that you can change.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Thank you so much, Lara. I am just trying to practice creating distance, and practicing compassion and kindness, but not getting caught up in it. Because there has been days when I'm kind of like not eating. I haven't eaten, or I haven't really slept well, or I'm exhausted, and therefore I can kind of take it more personally in certain days. But then, I've practiced meditation, and thankfully that's been kind of my guiding light to stay, stay. Sorry about this helicopter. um, um, to stay kind of, grounded. And because the pandemic, we kind of got forced to kind of live together. So it's, I mean, I just love my parents so much, but like just the political scene has been pretty intense, and things get said and you're just like, what did you just say? So, but I do my best to kind of just create distance and since I'm not able to draw boundaries because I live with my parents and I'm in their house, it honestly gets so intense that, if I don't like it, I'm asked to move out. So it's like, well, that's not really what I would like to do. I wish, there would be a little bit more awareness, and and kind of looking at our words and our actions, but it's hard to do that because I don't know, everybody's kind of suffering right now with the pandemic, and it's stressful working from home. And
I don't know if you,
so,
I
yeah.
don't think you can see it while you're walking, but there's a ton of love for you in the chat. So people, you have a fan club here. And I think it's important to remember that even when you have family who can say cruel things, it's important to surround yourself with people who love you and support you. And clearly you have that here. So that's
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you so much. I definitely feel the kindness and the beautiful energy from all of you. So I'm really grateful to be here, and I wanted to just share in case someone else had the same experience. And but yeah, pandemic life. Hashtag pandemic. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm gonna mute myself now. Thank you for
Nancy.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And we're
Thanks,
honestly
Aditi.
such a warm light, like Nancy said, in all of our events. We've loved having you. So thank you so much. Just to be mindful of the time, I'm going to ask if anybody has one more question, and then I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Jennifer. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat or speak up.
Oh, Laura, I'm kind of curious, like, as a licensed, I don't think LCSW is like social worker or clinical social worker. Like, how did you end up going into the nest care, human care? I don't know, so the nesty something. Like, how did you wind up there?
Oh, that's a long story. But I can tell you the quick abridged version. So
Okay.
I've been a therapist for about 20 years, and I've worked in a variety of different places, including homeless outreach, and I worked in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. And some of those places I found that people really had trouble coming into sessions, and I wanted to figure out, how do we bring care to people, where, when, and how they want to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing that using technology for about the last 10 or 12 years, and building platforms that bring care to people and really think about, how do people want to receive it? And is there a way that we can make it really accessible, really engaging, fun, to really meet people where they are at any given moment? So at Humanest, we have therapists that are available like on drop-in 7 days a week. So you can get care when you're wanting it, rather than scheduling it 3 or 6 weeks from now. And then we have a whole community of support. So we have almost 20, I think, drop-in groups per week now, as well as community like forums where people can post anonymously and get support from one another, like peer support. So it's a full care system, because my belief is that motivation varies from moment to moment. People's willingness to get help, people's level of distress varies from moment to moment, and we need to be able to be there to support one another in all of those different moments, not just when it's scheduled or when it's convenient for a therapist. So that's kind of what I started building out about a year ago, right before COVID hit, having no idea we were about to head into COVID. But it's been a fun journey, and we are still designing it and building it, and we would love help and feedback. So if anybody wants to come check it out and see what you think, I am like all about hearing about experiences of people trying it. We want people to love what we're building and what we're doing, and we actually are trying to bring people on to help build it as well. So if that's something that's of interest to you, reach out. I'd love your thoughts so that we can really, I was saying, I think before you got on, or maybe before we started, we're also working with UC Berkeley and working with students there to help design some parts of it. So if there are things that you're interested in, please reach out. We would love to kind of get some support and some help and co-design so that we can make sure that everyone's getting support how they want to get it. Yeah, there's my LinkedIn, so connect with me.
Oh, one last thing. I do like how in your graphics, they were imperfect shapes. I feel like that was very fitting. That was really cute.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent, and thank you, Lara. I think Nancy has dropped Humanest's link as well as the code that we can use in the chat, so feel free to go ahead and check it out. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Jennifer now for our guided meditation, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. And thank you, Laura, for that wonderful presentation. There was so much wisdom in there. And it's nice to have this opportunity to go after Laura and actually practice meditation and some movement, some mind-body movement. And I'm just curious, if people have experience with meditation before, if you feel comfortable putting it in the chat, if you have meditated before, or if you haven't, I'd just be curious to see where people are on the spectrum as we begin for a moment. Okay, great. Yes, thanks, Eiko. And okay, lots of meditators here. Okay, this is great. So I thought we would do a body, mind, and heart practice, really coming into our bodies and then sitting down and doing a guided practice. So if you feel like standing up, feel free to join me. And please listen to your body and doing what feels right and comfortable for you. This is always just a suggestion, so feel free to modify or adapt as you need to, okay? Listening to your body is the main thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and stand up and you can feel free to join me. And we'll just do a movement for a few minutes. It's nice to stand up, you know, as we've been sitting for a while and all day. And if you can take off your shoes, that's wonderful. And just maybe rocking on your feet, kind of back and forth from heel to toe. Maybe even spreading your toes wide open and just feeling the ground underneath you. Maybe bending your knees slightly, feeling the weight of your body kind of sinking into the earth, as if you're growing roots down into the center of the earth, feeling the support coming back up towards you, allowing you just to kind of breathe a little easier, releasing tension, kind of breathing down into the ground. Feeling rooted and connected on your in-breath, raising your arms up above your head, dropping the shoulders so there's space between your ears and your shoulders, just moving a little bit like a wind, like your arms are branches and leaves blowing in the wind while your feet are grounded to the earth. So we have this sense of being rooted and grounded, and yet we're responsive and we're moving to the life around us, listening to your body. Wonderful. Great. And then maybe putting your hands on your hips and moving your hips around and doing some hip circles. Stretching out that low back a little bit, listening to how this feels. Paying attention to your breath, seeing if you can move in harmony with your breath. Okay, wonderful. And then on the next in-breath, raising your arms back up. We'll do some arm circles, breathing in, and at the top, exhaling down the arms in front of you, coming into a full circle. And again, breathing in, the way up and down and out on the way down. Just moving at your own pace with your own breath. And then switching directions. You're ready, breathing in, your arms in front of you, and exhaling the arms behind you. Feeling the shoulders opening. Good. Then on the way up, let's now bend over to the right, opening up the left side body, feeling a stretch, breathing into the left lungs, opening the left lung, breathing in. Good. And inhaling back up to center, exhaling over to the other side. Feeling a stretch along the right side body and breathing into the right lung. Great. And then releasing. And then clapping your hands, warming, getting some friction. And then giving yourself a little massage, maybe on your arms and your shoulders, anywhere where it might feel a little stiff or in need of a little love, your low back, your kidneys, even down your legs, feeling a stretch in the low back if you go down to your leg. Again, listening to your body. And coming back up and just shaking things out for a moment, whatever your body needs, movement. And brushing off any last stale energy, anything you'd like to let go of energetically to feel fresh. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. So feel free to join me back in sitting. It's always nice to do a little movement before we meditate to help us get into our bodies a little bit. Let go of those thoughts that Laura was talking about. So finding a seat that's comfortable for you, where you can feel grounded. Maybe your feet are on the floor, making contact, or feeling your seat on your chair, your cushion. Allowing your back to be upright. The back of the neck to be long. And your hands resting on your thighs with your palms face down, if that's comfortable. The lips might be slightly parted, releasing any tension in the face, in the jaw, in the neck, the shoulders. And the eyes can be open or closed. If they're open, a soft downward gaze. Noticing what it feels like to be in your body, sitting in a dignified posture, feeling your presence on this earth. Noticing the breath as it moves through the body, wherever you feel it most easily in your body. And the rising and falling of the shoulders or the chest or the belly. Or the air moving in and out through the nostrils. Allowing yourself just to feel the breath. And thoughts might come and go, and that's okay. It's part of the practice. You always can come back to the breath. No big deal. And we can even imagine a big sky. Our awareness is vast and open as the blue sky. shining on a warm, sunny day. Clear and spacious and open. Radiant. And without limit. And so we can notice our breath and the vastness of this awareness. Seeing the thoughts or the clouds in the sky float through without grasping or clinging. And perhaps feeling more spacious in the body itself. Noticing our attitude towards ourselves at this moment. And perhaps softening. And saying a kind word to ourselves. Something that would be helpful for us to hear. And letting ourselves know it's okay. We're appreciating ourselves. And it's nice to let go of a sense of trying to improve ourselves in some way and just resting in our being, knowing that's enough in itself. We're part of life. We're part of the universe. And just the simple act of breathing is a giving and receiving with life. And perhaps extending this connection, this recognition of our inner connection to others, wishing others kindness towards themselves in our group tonight. Wishing that others are able to take in the wisdom that's been shared. Just as I may benefit, may others benefit as well. And may you have ease in your life. May you have joy. And may you reach your goals in life. And be content with what you have. Whatever your wish is for others, Feeling free to send it out in your out breath, or like rays from your heart center, and expanding the circle to other students at SF State, those in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, across our country and the world. May we all have healing in our lives. May we be safe and healthy and help each other. Allowing the imagery to dissolve back into the vastness of the sky-like nature of your mind. And resting for a moment. With gratitude. And as you feel ready, slowly opening your eyes if they've been closed. And taking in the sights and the sounds and feeling free to stretch or move your wrists or your ankles. Yeah. So thank you very much for your practice and for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer. That was amazing. I feel like you have such a positive energy and such a calming voice. And I really enjoyed that. I'm pretty sure everybody else did as well.
Thank you.
All right. I hope everybody's feeling all calm and all happy. We are going to wrap up soon. So let me just share my screen again. All right. So as we end the week with this wonderful workshop, we want to just ask about if any of you have any reflections that you want to share with us. What lessons you've learned from today or this week? What did Women's Week mean to you? Anything you'd like to share about this week? So you can either drop it in the chat or you can speak up if you'd like to. And if you have any other questions you want to ask our speakers, please feel free to as well.
One really good thing that I learned this week is really advocate for yourself, because it's hard for anyone else to do it for you. You are your best representation for you. Also, there are resources out there if you ever need help with mental health, trying to get that work-life balance, like meditation and things like Lara mentioned, also humanest. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining throughout the week and today. We really appreciate your presence.
Thank you so much for sharing, Isla. So glad we could do this. I will wrap up really quickly. So just to let you know, we're MOBS, we Organized Women's Week for you. And you can follow us on our social media. We have a website. You can always check us out there for upcoming events, or our Instagram, which is MOBS_SFSU. Or you can always look at us up on LinkedIn as well. Whatever you're comfortable doing or social media you have, you can always check out our upcoming workshops, which are geared towards mainly uplifting you professionally, as well as having networking events, career events, alumni meets,
it's a whole thing. So if you're interested, please do check us out. And I'd like to wrap up by saying that if you'd like to connect with either the speakers or us, you can always reach out to us on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIns are mentioned there. And if you would like to connect with each other, please make sure you sign up in that spreadsheet that my colleagues will be sharing in the chat as well. So thank you everybody for an amazing Women's Week. We hope to do this every year. And thank you so much for being a part of it, for supporting us, for coming to the workshops. And we're so glad you could make it. And thank you so much. And thank you to our speakers as well for joining us today and running such an amazing workshop.
Thank you, everyone. It's been such a joy to see all of your faces this past week. And I just want to send some affirmations to Aiko in particular for just being a light at every single event. And Brianna too, that's my best friend. So I saw Isla mention her in the chat.
Yes, thank you guys. And be sure to keep an eye on your emails for resources that we've collected throughout the week. That's all going to be in one place for you. Recordings will if you missed an event. And yes, thank you so much. And it was great to connect with you all and spend this evening with you. I hope you take some of the things you learned this week away with your daily life and wherever it may be needed. Take care, everyone, and I'm rooting for you all.
Thank you. And we will also share access to Big Health and to Humanist via email as well. So please stay tuned.
So dark. Good night, everybody. I'm still walking. Good night. Waving to you all.
Be safe.
Okay.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening. Thank you so much for the meditation time and all your love. See you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Isla.